Hey everybody, so good to see you and your smiley faces. Welcome to the Love Stories. You guys have a lot of questions about croissants and you keep asking, so we have answers. Today we have Chef. Chef, I'm going to let you tell your name and your last name because I don't want to butcher it, though I will be butchering a lot of words today.
That's okay. My name is Ambrose Erkenswick.
So good to have you, brother.
It's great to be here, Omar.
Hey, man.
Thank you for having me.
I know you're an industry legend, a croissant legend, so if you don't mind, just take a minute to tell everyone about your career and what have you done in the croissant world and what makes you so flaky.
Well, I've been making croissants now probably for almost, over 15 years. Directly outside of high school, I found a beautiful place in Chicago called the French Pastry School.
God, I love that.
And it's a very unique school that offered very intensive training and very classic and traditional French methods for pastry and for baking. And from there, I really found a passion for working with great ingredients, making beautiful products that people love to eat and enjoy all the time.
Absolutely.
And croissants is one of those things that is really a labor of love.
Just while we have you there, how do you pronounce it? Can you just give us a go croissant?
Hello, croissant.
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 Okay, that's how you say it, yo. Croissant.
No.
Okay.
Croissant. Croissant.
Crescent.
Yeah,
Crescent.
That's the worst.
We have a crescent expert in the house, y'all. Okay, so, please go on.
So I took a short program in Chicago. Following high school, I was really not interested in 4 years of gen eds and your typical traditional college experience.
Noted.
I had a very rigorous, intensive high school program that I was in, and so I was ready for something a little more hands-on and a little more. What's the word I'm looking for?
Wanted to get down and dirty.
Down and dirty. Exactly. So I was very happy to find the school that I found, and it's a 6-month program I took. It's called L'Art de la Pâtisserie.
Okay.
And from there, I was asked by the owners of the school to stay an additional 6 months to work with the instructors and kind of be an intern at the school. And working with people that really took things to the most extreme level of excellence that it can be really was left a strong impression on me.
I don't feel like it's talked about enough, the whole impact of internships when you're trying to build your career. There's a point where you're not that valuable to a team, so you just
the French way. The French way is
exactly
the apprenticeship, where you start at the bottom. They don't typically pay you in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. No back rubs. No.
And you got to put in the work. You've got to show the dedication and show that you're in it.
Absolutely.
These guys have spent their whole life perfecting these arts and these skills that they now are sharing with the world, and they don't just give all the secrets to anybody.
Exactly. I know. It's very cool, man. You have done a lot, and we're going to get actually down and dirty and make some croissant later today. You guys may see some of that in social media as well. But, I see croissant is super popular. It's kind of blowing up, and everybody's just has different shapes and things, and it just keeps evolving. But most people don't even know what a croissant is.
This is very true.
And since I know you are a boulanger, and other things that I cannot pronounce right now. So, what is bread? What is pastry? And what is it that makes croissant sort of lie in between, if you don't mind giving us a...
So that's a very good question, because it's very different between the U.S. and Europe. Right. So in Europe, you really either do one or the other. You do pastry or you do bread, boulangerie. And most people that grow up doing boulangerie and become bread bakers, they know nothing about pastry.
Yeah.
And the guys that focus on pastry and become pastry chefs, doing more desserts and kind of fancier, detail-oriented things, they know nothing about bread baking.
And that goes from the pies, the cookies, the crumbs, the cakes, petit gâteau,
macarons.
Macaron.
And lucky enough for me, the school that I went to, they taught us everything. So within 6 months, we learned how to make chocolate candies and showpieces, sugar candies and showpieces. We learned how to make entremet cakes. We did petit gâteau, petit four, breakfast pastries, breads, cakes. We did it all.
Gotta love it.
Very intensive 6 months.
I love pastry chefs, and I always said that we see all these Michelin star restaurants, and then the only way to really like push that envelope and have a restaurant that's memorable, it's through having an insane pastry chef. That's normally or often not talked about enough, I think.
Absolutely. They're usually the kind of the behind the scenes actor in the restaurant scene, because everybody's about the main meal.
However, the first thing that you get when you arrive is the bread, and then the thing that you get last that you're going to remember the most, and also you get when you're not hungry anymore. Thereby, it has to be perfect.
The dessert. Well, it's got to be balanced. It's got to be light. It's got to be refreshing. It can't be heavy. It can't be overpowering in any way. It should be just a little bit to round off the experience of the meal to satisfy the mind.
So let's go into croissant a little bit. So you have a yeasted dough, right?
Correct.
That then it's laminated with all this very special butter, which we can talk about that too. And we'll talk about flour, obviously.
Definitely.
Why grab a yeasted dough and laminate it with butter? Why try to make money the hardest way possible?
Well, it's because it's one of those things that when you do it well, it doesn't only taste good, it's beautiful.
It's incredible.
You love people love looking at them. They don't even want to eat them because they're so beautiful when it's really that well done.
And I always so here's where I kind of stand with the croissant, and I talk about this a lot. I feel like we live in a world where most people that have enjoyed croissant have had a day-old product.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
or
much
older than
that. Or much older than that, exactly. So imagine, like, all of your friends that love pizza have only had day-old pizza.
Or frozen
pizza. It's mind-blowing. And so that's just to, kind of articulate why we exist. We just want that experience. That's such like an ephemeral moment that takes place after 3 days of work, and then when it comes out of the oven, that moment which most people have never experienced, it's just love.
Absolutely. And you see the most popular bakeries around the country right now are the ones that are baking croissants all day long.
Yeah.
They're not just baking them overnight and they sit all day, and if they sell them, great. If they don't sell them, they sit there and they use them for something else the next day. These guys are baking small amounts every hour, every 2 hours, so that no matter what time of the day you come, you're going to get a fresh croissant, which means it's going to be the flakiest, it's going to be the lightest, it's going to be the most satisfying that it can be.
And sometimes it's okay to be flaky.
Well, it better be flaky. I was in a bakery. I was the head baker for a bakery in Chicago last year, called Pastry, and
guys, if you're hearing, sponsor us.
We have wonderful. They make wonderful croissants, and we had a woman come who left a terrible review one day, and it was the funniest thing to read. She goes, "The croissant was too flaky,
too buttery,
the flakes were everywhere." They were on the floor. They were on my lap. They're in my hair.
That's horrible.
It's like, oh, well, that means we did something right.
Yeah, we have a big sign in our shop that says, "Don't be real, be flaky." So can you tell us a little bit about flour? What is it about flour that we need to understand, or just like tidbits? Because I understand that's a whole world in its own, but like in the whole culinary world, pastry and baking is like almost sorcery, and within that world, laminated doughs is even more specialized. So most of us don't know enough.
I like to think of it as alchemy.
Okay.
Because you're almost turning water into wine. You take this very simple product, which is flour, you bring life to it with water, and even just those two things on its own, they create life. They pull yeast out of the air because it's food for yeast. So the natural yeast that exists all around us, it's naturally drawn to this mixture of flour and water, and immediately you start to create life.
This is an opportunity to explain what yeast is. Because people are like, oh, yeah, it's a thing that you put in bread and in beer. Two things that we love.
In many things,
Texas.
actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So what is Yeast.
So yeast is a natural occurring bacteria that grows all around us. Every piece of fruit that you'll pick in a garden or on a farm, sometimes, especially with grapes, it's a good one because it's a dark grape, and when you pick it, you see this white film on the outside. That's the natural yeast that's growing on that fruit.
It's a mushroom that eats sugar and then creates those two byproducts that we're trying to, keep inside that dough, which is CO2 and alcohol.
Yes.
And gosh, it's so interesting. I love baking. I've been baking since I was a kid, like not laminated stuff. That's definitely very new. So what are we going to be doing today? I mean, I know we have some fun time today at the kitchen. We're going to go make some croissant and definitely do a little side-by-side there. So tell us a little bit about...
So we have some exciting French flour that we're going to be testing today.
Okay, go on.
And it's called a T45, which is how they classify flour in France. It's a bit different from how flour is classified in the U.S. Here we talk about the extraction.
Okay.
The numbers that are associated with the type of flour usually is talking about how much of the wheat bran is being sifted out.
Right.
In France, it's all connected to what's called the ash rate, which means to find that out, they mix flour and water, they make a very simple dough, and they burn it in the oven.
Oh, wow.
And they weigh what's left.
That's kind of like when they wash the gluten?
Kind of, but here they're measuring...
More destructive.
Here they're measuring the minerals. The mineral content of the flour that is the only part that doesn't burn to nothing. So the weight of what's left, basically the carbon, the black, completely burnt through bread. You're getting rid of all the water. You're getting rid of everything else that just kind of disappears in the heat of the oven. And what's left is that ash content. And
so you're saying if we make this test with T45, we're going to have, 45 grams per kilo or something like that?
I'm not the scientist. It's hard to answer that question.
That was the idea.
Something along those lines, yes.
That's awesome. So what brings you to Houston?
Well, we're here for the International Dairy, Deli, and Bakery Show. And also, more importantly, we're here to see you.
Thank you.
One of the most important parts of what we do here with the Grand Moulin de Paris is we travel the U.S. and we try to find artisan bakers such as yourself, and we work with them to introduce this beautiful product and make sure you know the best way to use it so that you can make beautiful croissants yourself.
That's awesome. And like croissant making, it's a very humbling thing to make. I think
that's a good way to put it.
Anybody that's made croissant and never felt like, oh, I got this, and then quickly you realize you're only as good as your last batch.
Absolutely. Every day can be a little different.
Exactly. And so that's why I like to say when people are like, oh, do you have the best croissant or this, or do you not have the best croissant? And say, I may today,
That's a good answer.
It's definitely an infinite game, the whole having a good croissant, but it should be, in my opinion, a journey. Like, I don't know if the perfect croissant exists, but I do love the idea of living in the pursuit of it, and that's really what brings us here. So we started trying to, learning about laminated doughs, and that's how we understood. Okay, so the butter makes a huge difference, and so we started using French butter, and it's so much better.
Yeah.
So
the thing about the croissant is there's so many variables that every little detail is important as it translates to the final product.
Exactly.
Each ingredient, how you manipulate those ingredients, how you're laminating your butter and your dough together. It's a very tedious and nitpicky process that requires full attention all the time.
It's like treatment for your OCD right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's therapy for a lot of people. I find it very therapeutic.
Absolutely. Houston's been extremely generous with Love Croissant, and the word it's been out, and people are really loving the product. Most French folks think it's too big. I don't disagree, but kind of everything is bigger in Texas.
Everything's bigger in Texas, that's what I think.
And then so over the last 2 years, they have really supported, this journey. And basically what this is, what the love stories are, is a way for us to, tell people how committed we are to continue to push this envelope and continue to pursue perfect croissant.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me, brother.
I'm happy to be.
Let's get baking.
Let's get baking.